Hi and welcome to this video. I'm Wo, mixing engineer, and in this video I will show you how to use an SSL E-Channel. The reason I want to cover this specific plugin is because many artists I work with have bought this plugin during the Black Friday sale, and now they ask me, Wo, how do I use this thing properly? How do I get the most out of it? In this video I will explain this plugin in 3 different difficulty levels. The first is the basics of the EQ and what we are looking at exactly. The second layer takes a closer look at this plugin by looking at the different modules and the way they are routed to each other. And lastly, we go over the most abstract feature in my opinion, the dynamic sidechain, to start off with the first layer. You can see we have a filter, we have an EQ section with 4 bands, a Q control, a frequency selection and a gain knob, and only a gain knob and a frequency selection for the high filter and the low filter. Then we have dynamics, a gate, and a master control section. This EQ is most widely used for, you guessed it, its EQ function for the high frequency, the high mid frequency, low mid frequency, and the low frequency. In more detail, the Q band or the narrow broader factor, you can see a small image here of a small band and a broader band. This just means that the EQ band is broad all the way to the right or a bit more narrow to the left. One more thing, added bonus for this SSL, it's made to be put to the extremes. You can open the gain all the way up and play the sound. Let's do it like this, and then the meter goes into the red, but it doesn't actually matter because it will never ever clip. Just play around with the Q factor to get the exact character and the exact tone you want. The second part is the filter. Super quick, you can just remove the low end or cut off some of the high end. Super easy. The dynamics section, these 3 knobs are the compressor. A small tip I've learned is to put the threshold all the way, reset the gain, and pull up the ratio until you get 3 to 6, like the first 2 lamps of a gain reduction. This meter to the right, the yellow and red one, says how much of gain reduction you do with the compression settings. Below the compression are these 3 knobs. These are the gate expander. If you press this button, you get a gate. If you deselect it, you get an expander. So the sound now, if I pull up the threshold, it will expand the sound in this range of this release. If you put it on gate, it will take away the noise, gate the noise. This isn't a tutorial on expanders and gators, but this is the functionality. And lastly, the master section here. There's a big red phase switch to swap the polarity. You have an in knob. If you pull this up, this increases the volume going into the plugin. If you reduce or increase the slider, you increase or decrease the volume coming out of the plugin. So if you're clipping already before you even did anything, you can pull down the in knob and it will reduce the volume going in. Then you have an analog. If you switch this on, this gives a proprietary sound of the analog emulation by waves, and all it does actually is increase some of the noise floor and introduce some noise floor. I never use it. I mean, that was the negative part of the consoles. They made noise. Why would you want that in a plugin? I prefer the clean sound. Let's put it like that. And it's automatically turned on off, so you never have to take a look at that. On the surface, this was the basic first level. Now the second level, we get a bit more abstract, but still nothing too fancy. You see here, filters. You don't actually see EQ, but these 4 sections are EQ. Then you see dynamics, which is compression, gate expander. We've covered that. And you can view these as individual modules, going from dynamics into the filters, into the EQ, out of the plugin. This is by default. But we can change this order to do things differently and to influence each module in a different way. I'll put on the screen the flow diagram, the signal path from the manual. Yes, if you read the manual, you learn something, but default is dynamics, filters, EQ. If you press this button, split, this places the filters before the dynamics and then the EQ. So you go filters, dynamic, EQ. If you deselect it, you go dynamics, filter, EQ. The next way you can alter the signal path is this button, channel out. Combined with the split is filters, EQ, dynamics. Now you can alter the sound that's going into the dynamics even further by EQing whatever you want and only then passing it through the dynamics. Now the order between EQ first, then compression, or compression first and then EQ is quite important, but also kind of an advanced thing. For example, if I want to have a kick sound fat, I probably first compress it and only then add some EQ. But if the kick has problems, I probably first EQ it and only then put it through the dynamics. But even then, I probably put an EQ I put in another EQ after the dynamics to get back some of the clarity, some of the tone, some of the character of the kick, of the sound you're pulling through the EQ compression order. The third level is this knob here, the DIN SC, standing for Dynamic Sidechain. This is difficult to understand because there is little visual feedback going on. I'll try to explain it the best I can. When you turn on the Dynamic Sidechain, these gain knobs from the EQ will not behave like an EQ. Let me show you. If I turn on the Dynamic Sidechain, you don't get any gain. If I turn it off, you get the gain from this. So what's actually happening is this EQ section is still selecting the bands it's on. So if you put it like this, it's 5K. But the gain knob dictates the amount of frequency, 5K in this case, that's going through to the compressor. If I turn up the gain on this band, that means more of 5K is going through the compressor, resulting in the compressor working harder on those specific frequencies. Musical application for this is a de-esser. All the sibilances, all the S sounds, you can reduce them using this method. I think if you pull down these, set it around 6K, kind of broadband, and then increase the amount of S's, the frequency range of the S's going through, you can compress those very heavily. For a kick, I'd say do it like this. If you want to increase the attack, the transient, reduce the gain of the low frequencies all the way. And maybe a bit of high frequency, high mid frequencies to give it a bit more character, a bit more tone. Because if I put this at unity, all the low end information is being compressed as well. Let me show you visually what's actually happening over here. The best way to do that is with a Pro C2 by FabFilter. Here is FabFilter C2, a compressor as we all know it. You can see gain reduction, signal, knee, the deal. And then below here you have the sidechain section. If I select this, if I turn it on, pull it all the way around, say 110. If I play the sound, you can see everything below 110, 113 is not being included in the compression. So if I pull it all the way up here, where there is very little signal, you see there's almost no gain reduction because there's nothing going through to the actual compression. If I turn it off, everything, even the low end, is included in the compressor and is being compressed. And you can see that over here with the gain reduction going on. Moving this band left to right is similar to doing this. Turning on dynamic sidechain, pulling this band all the way down, setting it at around 110. And now nothing of the low end is coming through. If I increase it, the low end is being compressed again. And the reason why you could use this specific Waves SSL E-Channel plugin for dynamic sidechain, despite it being a bit difficult and not as visually appealing, is because you like the sound the SSL E-Channel is adding to your sound, the flavor it is giving. Just the same like the compression, you can keep all of that and you can dial it in within the plugin itself. This could be useful, but it's actually up to you. It's completely up to you if you want to delve this deep into this plugin, or if you have different plugins that do the same but are a bit easier, like the Pro C2, in which you can really see, and you can see the waveform and amount of compression going on. It's better visual feedback. Concluding, the SSL E-Channel as a multi-purpose tool, a Swiss Army knife of plugins. It's on all my channels when I mix something, because I first dial in the amount of volume for my gain staging. I then use some filters. I use some dynamics to keep everything in check and give a rough balance, a rough character, rough tone to the entire mix. And this is my quickest way of working, because everything is at hand and you don't need 5 plugins to do the same thing. It reduces CPU load, it reduces the amount of time you keep spending on specifically like fine tuning. That's for a later stage after this one, if you decide to do so, because you can get amazing results with this thing only. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something. I absolutely enjoyed. It was a blast to explain this, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.